On our broadcast tonight, as the prosecution tightens its net around the de facto owner of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, the mysterious billionaire has once again defied court orders to appear for questioning. An intense scene in Thailand. The army declares martial law in a surprise move that an aide to the embattled prime minister refers to as half a coup d'etat. And President Park Geun-hye is in the UAE for a ceremony marking the installation of a Korean-built nuclear reactor there. But is there a future in Korea's nuclear facility exports? Early edition begins now. It is 5 a.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in Abu Dhabi, and 6 on a Tuesday evening here in Seoul. This is Early Edition at 6. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us.
Now, we're going to begin this Tuesday evening with the latest on the ferry disaster probe. The man authorities believe could unlock many of the mysteries of the Sewol-ho ferry accident continues to defy orders to come in for questioning.
Yoo Byung-hun, the practical owner of the ferry, was due to appear at an Incheon court Tuesday afternoon for a hearing that will ultimately decide whether an arrest warrant is issued against him.
But to no one's surprise, was a no-show once again. Our Shin Se-min starts us off.
The de facto owner of the sunken Sewolho ferry, Yoo Byung-hun, has once again defied orders to come in for questioning over his possible involvement in the accident. An Incheon court that will decide whether to issue an arrest warrant for Yoo had asked to speak with him Tuesday, but he was a no-show, just as he was last Friday when prosecutors asked him to appear. Yoo is wanted for questioning on tax evasion and embezzlement charges. The court is expected to rule on an arrest warrant request by prosecutors Tuesday or Wednesday. If and when it's issued, prosecutors plan to force their way into the religious compound Yoo's family owns in Gyeonggi-do province. The 73-year-old is believed to be hiding inside, although prosecutors say he may also be staying at the home of one of his supporters. The Yoo family founded a religious cult known as the Salvation Sect, and about 1,000 believers have set up a human barricade around the religious compound in Gyeonggi-do to block authorities from entering. Raising the stakes of a confrontation, prosecutors and police have deployed over 4,000 special forces and police nearby. Yoo's family is also wanted for questioning, but they have also defied orders to do so. Yoo's first son, Yoo Dae-gun, was reportedly seen at Incheon International Airport on April 19th, just 3 days after the Sewol-ho ferry accident. He had reportedly purchased a ticket to France but didn't get on a plane. Prosecutors at the time had already banned Yoo from leaving the country. His whereabouts are still unknown. Yoo Dae-gun was involved in the day-to-day operations of the company that owns Sewol-ho ferry, and there is currently a warrant out for his arrest. Early Tuesday morning, the National Tax Service froze more than $19 million worth of Yoo Byung-hun's real estate and property assets. Early Tuesday morning, the National Tax Service said it had started the process of freezing more than $19 million worth of Yoo Byung-hun's assets for tax collection purposes, although prosecutors are also looking into ways to compensate the victims of Sewol-ho ferry tragedy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, the Sewol-ho ferry disaster has rocked public confidence in the Korean government and raised critical questions about just how safe we are here in this country as we go about our daily lives. President Park Geun-hye pledged wide-ranging reforms in a televised address on Monday to ensure a similar tragedy never happens again. And the government has already begun the process of making sure the president's words become reality. Arirang News, Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The government wasted no time initiating follow-up measures to President Park Geun-hye's package of remedies to ensure another disaster like the Sewol-ho ferry accident does not happen in the future. As her address wrapped Monday, officials led by Presidential Chief of Staff Kim Ki-chun broke President Park's remedies into 5 main sectors and 27 measures in total. The main sectors are the restructuring of government, reforming how government officials are appointed, proposing a special law to the National Assembly authorizing the establishment of a fact-finding committee into the ferry disaster, the establishment of a national safety ministry, and the establishment of a monument and a People's Safety Day on April 16th, the day of the ferry disaster. President Park singled out corruption as the main factor undermining the country's safety standards, saying it created an atmosphere where the ferry could sink and take so many lives with it.
공직 유관단체 기관장과 감사직에는 공무원을 임명하지 않을 것입니다. 퇴직 공직자의 취업 제한 대상 기관 수를 지금보다 3배 이상 대폭 확대하겠습니다.
Prime Minister Chung Eung-won called for all-out efforts Tuesday to revamp the country's safety management system and root out corruption among public officials. A large number of state-run organizations are headed by retired public employees that have worked in firms and organizations related to their former responsibilities. These officials have been described as part of a bureaucratic mafia because of their tendency to have collusive ties with those they were supposed to supervise or regulate. According to the state-run provider of public information, Arirang, 51 out of 153 heads of public organizations, or roughly 1/3, could be categorized as bureaucratic mafia. President Park is expected to carry out a government reshuffle, including hiring a new prime minister after she returns from a 3-day trip from the UAE later this week. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, over in National Assembly, the nation's first plenary session on the latest ferry accident has opened, with lawmakers grilling cabinet ministers about the government response to the accident. And in the hot seat today was the nation's prime minister, who offered to resign last month following the ferry disaster. Our political correspondent Kim Young-gil has more.
It's been more than a month since the Sewolho ferry capsized and sunk in waters off Korea's southwestern coast, and the nation is still seeking answers about what went wrong that day and in the days leading up to it. Lawmakers opened their first plenary session on Tuesday to ask those very questions, and Prime Minister Chung Eung-won found himself on the receiving end. Ruling's Henry Party lawmaker Yoo Gi-jun questioned whether the captain and crew of the sunken Sewolho ferry were qualified for their duties.
The vessel's captain and the crew were the first ones to leave the capsizing ship. What do you think of this?
The captain should have taken responsibility of all passengers until the end. The Korea Coast Guard was also hasty in the initial stages of the rescue operations. They weren't able to get onto the ship as the ferry enlisted.
The lawmaker said he agreed with President Park Geun-hye over dismantling the Korea Coast Guard for its failed rescue mission, but emphasized that its role in guarding Korea's Dokdo Island and clamping down on illegal Chinese fishing boats in Korean waters should continue. Lawmaker Moon Hee-sang of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy asked whether a cabinet reshuffle was imminent.
We are aware of the cabinet reshuffle. We all feel the responsibility. But for now, we will focus on handling the aftermath of the ferry disaster.
Lawmaker Moon added that if a control tower for safety is set up under the Prime Minister's office, an efficient communication system was necessary between the central and local governments.
Lawmakers will conduct a second day of plenary questioning on Wednesday to uncover more details about the ferry accident and to determine whether to appoint a special prosecutor for an investigation. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gon-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now, over in Thailand, martial law has been declared by the army there. Pro and anti-government protesters have been warned in no uncertain terms to stay off the streets of Bangkok.
And the declaration comes after months of unrest and the deepening political crisis in the country. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
Thailand is under temporary military rule as the army in the early hours of Tuesday morning local time declared nationwide martial law to restore order in the crisis-hit country.
To maintain peace and order and bring back peace into all groups and all sides as soon as possible, I used Law Section 2 and 4 on Martial Law 2457 to announce martial law all over Thailand.
He denied a military coup was underway, only saying the army needs to take charge of public security. General Prayut also urged people to carry on with their business as usual. Thai public television showed images of soldiers outside broadcast stations in Bangkok Tuesday, announcing that all TV stations were being secured by the military. An aide to the interim prime minister was quoted as saying the move had not been relayed to the government beforehand and that it remains to be seen whether the army chief will agree to stay impartial. The aide added this declaration of martial law was half a coup. Thailand's army has staged 11 coups since the end of absolute monarchy in 1932. The last one occurred in 2006. The declaration of martial law comes 2 weeks after Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra was ousted from office, along with 9 cabinet ministers for allegedly abusing their power. Anti-government protesters had wanted Yingluck out for months. The government had scheduled elections for July 20th after earlier polls were cancelled due to mass protests. The next elections are also likely to be boycotted by anti-government protesters who want the remnants of Yingluck's government out and a neutral leader installed. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's foreign ministry is considering issuing a travel warning to Thailand for the safety of Koreans with plans to visit the Southeast Asian country or its nationals there. Moving on to other stories, it's another thorn in the already thorny Sino-U.S. relations. China has denounced and denied U.S. charges that 5 of its army officers hacked into the computers of American companies. This represents a shift in the way the United States goes after hackers. Here's Arirang with the story.
China says charges that 5 of its military officers have been engaging in cyber espionage are completely made up. China's foreign ministry on Monday called on the U.S. to immediately withdraw its charges, saying they will only stand to damage U.S.-China relations. In the most immediate sign that they will, Beijing has already said they're suspending the activities of the China-U.S. Cyber Working Group, an initiative agreed on by both countries just 1 month ago. Earlier on Monday, U.S. prosecutors charged 5 Chinese military officers of stealing trade secrets from 5 companies. It's the first time the U.S. has filed such criminal charges against a foreign state.
What I think distinguishes this case is that we have a state-sponsored entity, state-sponsored individuals using intelligence tools to gain commercial advantage. And that is what makes this case different.
The accused officers belong to Unit 61398 of the People's Liberation Army, a unit long believed to be staffed by thousands of Chinese cyber troops. China denies any involvement, which doesn't come as a surprise to experts.
The Chinese have basically 2 responses. One is, we're not spying on you, we don't hack you. And the second one is, in fact, you guys are the biggest hacking empire in the world. We've seen through the Snowden revelations that you are constantly hacking into other countries' networks. You are the big hypocrites, and we are the biggest victims.
The landmark case is expected to pave the way for more indictments down the road and shows that the U.S. is serious about holding foreign governments accountable for cyber attacks. Washington estimates cyber espionage costs the U.S. economy as much as $100 billion a year. Arirang, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to attend a ceremony in the United Arab Emirates to celebrate the debut of a Korean-built nuclear reactor there. She and others hope the deal will pave the way for more exports of Korea's nuclear technology. But we do have skeptics. Our Na Yeon-kyung has this report.
The demand for building nuclear power plants globally has rebounded since Japan's Fukushima disaster in 2011. The World Nuclear Association in an earlier forecast says the market is worth $40 billion a year and will grow at around 3% annually by the year 2030. And officials say President Park making a short 2-day trip to the UAE, despite possible public backlash for diverting her attention away from the sunken ferry disaster, demonstrates the government's determination to bring more of Korea's nuclear technology to the overseas market. But some experts in Seoul say this will be easier said than done. While Korea is able to build its own nuclear facilities, its technology independence level is still not up to 100%.
And in the meantime, probably over almost 20 years, they've been delving into developing the remaining 5%, which has to do with reactor coolant pumps, man-machine interface system, which is related to main control room, and last but not least, computer code, design code. And I believe that they are actually doing this one at a time. And by this time, the last one that still has to be resolved. That means probably we're 99% done. We got only 1% remaining. Now, is it the same as 100%? I don't think so, because 99% and 100% can make a day and night difference.
He also points out that if Korea wishes to win more deals from the international market, it needs the involvement of more than just the state-run Korea Electric Power Corporation, for example, participation from the private sector. That way, it can boost manpower and capital and have a better chance at beating competitors like Areva of France and General Electric of the United States. As for last year's corruption scandals involving nuclear energy officials, local experts say it's imperative that Korea clears its name on the global stage. Once Korea regains trust on top of securing a steady supply chain of uranium requirements, pundits say Korea should have a fair chance at inking more international deals in the future. 나현경, Arirang News.
We shift gears to a different story. A growing number of foreigners are coming to Korea not for vacation, but for medical treatment, namely plastic surgery. The number of foreign tourists visiting the nation for medical purposes surpassed the 200,000 mark last year for the first time ever, according to the Health Ministry. That's a surge of nearly 33% compared to the previous year. And when they come, they spend money. Foreign patients spend more than $380 million on medical treatment in Korea in 2013. A quarter of all medical tourists last year came from China, which topped the list, followed by those from the U.S., Russia, and Japan, respectively. Korean companies operating in India are looking at the recent victory of the BJP and its leader Narendra Modi as an opportunity to expand business ties in a nation of 1.2 billion people. Modi, who is perceived as being market-friendly, has pledged to cut the nation's unemployment rate, and Korean firms will be making their case that they can create new jobs.
Right, POSCO, for one, is set to return to talks regarding the construction of a steel mill, which has been on hold for 9 years due to land acquisition issues and environmental concerns. Samsung Electronics and LG plan to release a range of low-priced smartphones to meet growing demand there. And in a recent survey conducted on 200 Korean companies in India, 63% said they believe that business conditions would improve under the new Indian government. So we have heard of Geun-hye in Korea and Abenomics in Japan, but there has been a new term trending in recent days, something called Modinomics. Now, India's Prime Minister-to-be Narendra Modi has a clear mandate to push forward his economic agenda that some are already referring to as Modinomics.
Modi has made promises to business, big promises in terms of infrastructure and tax reform, and that raises hopes that it would create more opportunities for Korean firms to make inroads to the world's most populous democratic country.
For some analysis, Cho Chung-jae, head of South Asia team at Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, joins us live in the studio. Dr. Cho, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So India's Prime Minister-elect has pledged to attract more foreign direct investment, among other things, and hopes that the new government will transform the economy, really have investors cheering and excited. Could Korean firms go in and take advantage of Modi's economic policy?
Yeah. In the Indian security market, the infrastructure, the development, and the construction companies, energy companies, capital good manufacturers, and the financial companies, the shares have already soared. The Indian domestic companies as well as the foreign companies will have business opportunities more in this area. The problem is that the competitions will be also heated with more opportunities. Eventually, the one step ahead and proactive strategies are needed.
Well, Korea's POSCO, 9 years since they officially signed a contract, still waiting for the green light. It's a $12 billion Indian steel plant. Opposition from local government is sitting in the way. Now, with Modi taking over the reins, can we expect some positive changes?
Yeah, the Modi, when he was the chief minister of the Gujarat, he removed and streamlined so comprehensive the administrative procedures that inhabited the private investment. So now the Gujarat is called China in India. And during the election period, the Narendra Modi, he strongly criticized the maladministrations, that the corruptions and scandals on the iron ore or the coal have delayed the development and the power of the productions. Under the status that the authorities are independent from the federal government in India, I could not say assertively, but definitely POSCO project will have a positive impact, I think.
Right. So, however, there are experts who caution against too much optimism, as now there are so many pledges to be fulfilled, and will Modi be able to deliver or execute all of them?
Yeah, the utmost the task for the Modi government would be activation of the investment, especially the private investment. The government have no further the capacity for the investment because of the high the fiscal deficit. Moreover, the persisting high inflation pressures hinders immediate switch to the interest rate policies. So therefore, I think the government have no option than the private investment, including the foreign companies, to escape 2-year low growth trap and jump on again the virtuous cycle of the investment, consumption, and high economic growth.
Well, this is a very promising and important time for Korean government and Korean businesses as well. What can be done by these two entities to make sure they take full advantage of the situation right now, in your opinion, Dr. Jo?
Yeah, I think it is a very opportune moment for the Korean government to review and evaluate the outcome of the economic cooperations with India. And based on this, we have to draw up the more concrete and active plans to exploit the new opportunities. And our private companies should take advantages of business opportunities more actively, while strengthening tax transparency and the responsibility to the local community and the environment.
So it's important not to hesitate, but to simply steamroll the bulldozer away and start to get creative along the way.
Yes.
Well, India, definitely a huge market with lots of potentials for Korean businesses if tapped correctly with proper measures. All right, Dr. Cho Chung-jae, head of South Asia team at the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight.
Thank you.
had a more summer-like weather conditions today here in the nation's capital, but I hear that in the south it was totally another story. Let's get a look at the forecast with our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, what do you have in store for us today?
Well, first of all, good evening. And today has been a rainy day for people in the southern region, like you said. And there is a heavy rain advisory in effect on Jeju Island, with precipitation coming down at a rate of 10 millimeters per hour.
Any rain in the forecast here in Seoul?
None in the forecast for this week, and it will be mostly sunny with high temperatures up to 30 degrees in some regions, and so enjoy it while you can. Now, along with the heavy rain that's coming down in the southern parts of the country, the daytime heights have dropped dramatically compared to the last few days. However, by tomorrow, all of the rain should clear out, bringing the temperatures back up. Now, going over to our temperature readings, we'll start off the morning at 14 before reaching up to 26 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 30 and 27 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 24, Dokdo at 19, while Mankungang tops out at 16. Now, as for the weather conditions down in Jindo at the site of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, the on and off showers continue with strong winds, and although the speed of the currents in the area have slowed. Well, that's all I have at this moment. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Moon Gun-young. Have a great rest of the evening to those of you in Korea, and we hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow. Take care.